Hello everyone. So this is the video in which we are going to complete the authentication of our application. So now we are going to add validation to our forms. So we need to start with the login form. Here you can see I'm inside pages, auth and login. Okay. So let me tell you about the libraries that we are going to actually use in order to achieve that. So the first thing is we are going to make use of React Hook form. You can search for it on your browser and you will get to this website, reacthookform.com. You can see this is a very advanced and very performant flexible library that we can use in order to build beautiful forms. Actually, the performance will be, far more superior compared to other libraries. So I'm just going to use this one. And along with this, in order to add some validation, we're going to use Yup. Okay, so you can search for Yup and you'll find this npm package. Okay, and you can see it's very widely used. Okay, so we need to install these things. And first of all, let me just copy the installation command and we'll go back to our client side. You can see I'm inside my front end repo. Then I'm going to uh, install it. Let me actually clear up this terminal first. Okay, now I'm just going to write npm I want the Yup library. I also want React hook form. Okay. And along with that, we are also going to need hook form resolvers. Okay. So here I'm just going to install the third package called hook form slash resolvers. And please again make sure that you are not making any spelling mistake. Write it exactly as I am writing over here. Okay. Then hit enter and you will get these three packages installed. Then let's now start talking about the login form. Okay. Since we are working on the login first of all. So in order to basically submit some data to the backend, we need to first of all define a schema over here inside our login form. So let me write validation schema. Okay. So you now understand that we are creating an schema which will be used to do the validation. So in order to create the schema, we are going to make use of the library that we just installed called Yup. Okay. And let me tell you how we are going to do that. So first of all, let's create a schema, okay? And this schema will be equal to Yup, and let's get the Yup library imported over here. So uh, I'm just going to simply write in the next line, import everything. That means star as Yup. So here I'm just using this as a statement, okay, to rename everything as Yup from the library Yup, okay. Then after this, we are going to make use of Yup over here. So let's write on this Yup, we have something called object. So we are going to create an object and let's define the shape of that object. So inside shape, we need to provide some configuration. So the first property that we want inside the schema is email. Okay. You can again take a look at the UI of our application. This is the actually this is crashing right now because we are making changes to our code base. So first of all, let me tell you that we're going to have two fields over here. The first one will be to get the user's email and the second for password. So we are just going to define those two fields inside the schema. Here, in order to basically define the type of email and whether it's required or not, okay, we are going to again make use of here. And on this here, now I'm going to call this a string method, okay. So this means this email has to be a string. Then we are going to make sure that it's an email, and if it's not a valid email then we are going to customize the error message that we want to display to the user. So here we are going to just pass please enter a valid email. So if a user doesn't enter a valid email, they're going to see this error inside the basically below the field, okay. Then in order to make it required, we can just change this required method on it, and we can also display a message again. So when the user doesn't provide this particular field and they are trying to submit the form, we are going to display this message, email is required. So I hope this is very clear why and how we are going to basically create the schema. And the next field is the password field. Actually, let's write this p in a small case. So here I'm just going to write password. Then this password will be again a string. So let me write yum dot string. And here I actually want to add the minimum length to this password. So here I'm just going to write min, and then you can see we need to provide the number first of, and then we can provide the message as the second argument. So here the minimum length now will be 6. So here the message that we are going to display, if the user enters the password shorter than 6 characters, so we are going to say that password must be at least 6 characters. Okay. So I hope this is again very much easy for you. So let me write the message. Password must be at least 6 characters. Okay. Then in order to make it required again, I'm going to change this required method, and let's also enter the custom message that we want to display if the user is not providing this field. So here we are going to say password is required. Okay. I hope this is very much clear. Now we have created the schema, but where and how we're going to use that schema. So that's the next question. Okay. And let me just go back inside this login component. Now, inside the component, before returning the JSX, we are now going to basically create our hook form. Okay. So here we have actually access to something called use form. This use form is a hook coming from React hook form. And you can see it's already auto imported over here. You see, use form, it's not a default export, it's a named export. So we are writing it inside the curly bracket and it's imported from React hook form. Now inside this hook form, we need to actually pass two things. The first one is resolver. Now this resolver is going to basically get this yep resolver. So first of all, let's get this yep resolver imported over here. Okay, at the top. So I'm just going to write import, and this is again going to be a named export, so we are using this curly bracket. The library name from which we are going to get it is called hook form slash resolvers, and inside this we have actually you see there are lots of libraries that are alternative to here, like this joy. And so right now we are going to use this here. So let me just try it over here inside this curly bracket. We're going to get here resolver. Now we have the access to EF resolver. Now inside EF resolver, we need to pass the schema that we created. Okay, so I'm just going to write over here schema inside this EF resolver. And the next thing is we can also, pre-fill the values inside the form. So for that, we have this option to provide default values. So let's say if I write over here inside default values, I can just write email, and I can provide a default value for email. Okay, so let's say I write over here abc@gmail.com. So do you know what is going to happen? Inside the form, email is will be already pre-filled with this value. So right now, I just don't want any pre-filled value, so I'm just going to leave it empty like this. Similarly, I'm going to do the same for the password key. But I have showed you how to basically achieve this, pre-filling the form if you want it in any of your forms using this library. Now, after we call this use form, we are actually going to get the return value over here on the left side. So I'm just going to write const, and this is actually going to return an object. So I'm just going to destructure the values from it. So the first thing that I'm going to destructure right now, that will be our, you can see there are lots of things over here that we can get. The first thing we want is register. This will be used to basically find the input fields with this hook form. Then we also want the access to handle submit. Okay. Then we are also going to get the form state. Now form state is again an object, so we can do destructuring again. So here you can see inside form state there are lots of values like whether the form is loading, if the submit operation is successful, okay, and how many times we have tried to submit, what are the fields that have been touched. There are lots of things that we can get from form state. Okay, so right now only thing I'm interested in is this errors. Errors is actually an object. So here inside errors we'll have the error for the email, for the password, and we are going to actually use them to display below the input if there is some validation error. So right now you can see we have basically initialized our hook form over here using this schema, and also we provided some default values. Let's actually create an on submit function. Okay, so when the form is getting submitted, so we are going to actually invoke this on submit function, and over here we are going to get the argument called data. This data is going to contain these two fields, email and password. Okay, so for now I'm just going to console log the data that we are going to get. So let me write console.log data, and here I'm just going to write form data login. So this is the login form data. And now what we need to do next is, here you see inside our JSX we have this form element. Now inside this form element we have our input and the submit button. Okay, so the first thing we need to do over here on this form element is binding this React hook form with this form element. So in order to do that, we can just simply write on this form on submit. So let me write on submit. And inside this on submit, we have to first of all call the handle submit. This is the handle submit we are getting from use form. So I'm just going to call handle submit, and inside this handle submit we have to call on submit. So let's pass the reference for that on submit function. Okay, so now we have binded our hook form with this form element. Then the next step is to also register these input with the React hook form. And let me tell you how that is done. It's actually a very simple process. You just need to go to the input that you want to basically register. And over here, I'm just going to, inside curly bracket, I'm just going to call register, and let's pass the key. So here this is the email input, so I'm just going to provide email, and let's restructure everything that we are going to get as a result of calling this register function. So that's all that you are going to need. Okay, now let me just format this document, and also I'm going to word wrap it. Now you see there are lots of classes over here, and I just want to basically customize something. So I'm just going to copy and paste, over here, and let me tell you what is the difference. So all the classes are same as before except for this one. So you see inside this curly bracket, actually I'm doing string interpolation, and on this using this errors from the form state, we are checking if there is any error on the email field. Then we are going to actually display red border, and also in the focus state border will be red. Otherwise, the border will be the stroke color, that is the default color. Okay. Now there is next thing. Let's say when we have some error. Okay. So what we want to do is, this is the div which is actually containing the input along with the icon at the end. So after that div, I'm actually going to write the condition inside curly bracket. I'm going to check on this errors object. I'm going to check if there is any error on the email input. Then we're going to just simply display a paragraph. So let's use the paragraph, and on this paragraph, since it's going to display some error message, let's make it red color. So I'm going to write text red, and also I'm going to make the text size small. So let's write text SM. Now the error message, it's actually going to be coming from this errors.email. So I'm going to write over here errors.email, and on this email we're going to have these properties: reference, root type, types, and message. So I'm interested in message. I'm just going to write it like this. So now you see we are done with our input field. Now we have actually registered the input field email with our reactor form. We have also customized some styling using this errors.email, and also we are able to display some error message, the appropriate error message below the input if there is any error on the email field. Now we are going to do the similar thing for the password field. So let's just go to the password field, which is this one, input. Now let me just actually copy and paste over here. I'm just going to copy this register, and as a prop I'm just going to pass it over here. Just the only difference will be, instead of email it will be our password. And again, please make sure that this key matches with the key used inside the schema. Okay. Now the next thing is, we can also customize the you know uh, we can also customize the classes again. So here I'm just going to again copy and paste over here, but you can just pause the video over here and make sure that all the classes are same, just like mine. Okay. And then the next thing that we are going to do is, again, we need to display the error message on the password field. So here again, let me just copy this thing. I'm just going to customize whatever is needed. So here after pasting it, let's use password instead of email. So let me write errors.password, and also over here we're going to write errors.password. So if there is any error on the password field, we are going to display it over here. Now the next thing is, we need to also go to the button which is actually being used to submit the form. First of all, I'm going to remove this button which is giving the option to sign in with Google, because we are not integrating sign in with Google. This was only for the front end purpose. If you want, you can watch my other video, or leave a comment. I'll make a video on how to integrate Google Auth. Okay. So I'm just going to remove it for now. Then actually that contained our two buttons, and I removed both of them. So let me just put it back again over here. Okay. So I can actually safely remove this button. At the top of this button, we have this input, which is actually type submit, and the value set to sign in. So only thing I need to remove from here is this on click. Okay. So here I'm just going to remove on click, because when the submit event happens, this okay, when we press on this, the form will be submitted, and this function will be invoked on submit, and the data will be available over here. We are going to see that very soon. And over here, I also want to do one more thing. When the form is submitting the data, I don't want user to, click on it again. So I'm just going to write disabled, and the disabled will be equal to, here from the form state, we can get one more thing, that is submitting. Okay, so is submitting. So when the form is getting submitted, I want this button to be disabled. Okay, and if you are getting confused, we can also, make this from input to button, and instead of self closing it, we can write it like this. Okay, and instead of passing value over here, we can pass it inside this opening and closing bracket. So let's just write over here, sign in, sign in like this. Okay, now there is one more thing. You see, inside our auth.js slice, we have this is loading state inside our auth slice. So what I'm going to do, I'm going to get access to that is loading property inside our login form. So at the top, I'm just going to write inside the functional component. Let's write use selector. Now this use selector is a hook from React Redux, which is used to get the value of any slice inside the state, inside any functional component. So here I'm just going to write state, and on the state we have a node called auth, that is a slice, and inside slice we have a property called is loading. So I'm just going to destructure it over here. Now I'm going to write a condition over here that this button should be disabled when the form is submitting or when is loading is true. Okay, then let's also make this button change the text when this event happens. That means the form is getting submitted or the form is loading. So in that case, what I'm going to do over here, let's just wrap the text inside curly bracket. Then I'm going to write the condition, and if this condition is true, then we are going to display another text which will be submitting. Okay, and instead of submitting, we can also display some loading spinner. And over here, I'm just going to write sign in inside single or double quotes. Okay, in order to make it a string. And now our form is complete. Okay, so we are now ready we are now ready to submit the form data to the API. But before that, let's just go back to our UI, and I'm just going to open up my inspector tool. Let me just show you the inspector tool over here, and let's open up our console. Okay, now actually I'm just going to clear up the console. If I'm just going to write some email and password over here. So after that, if I click on this sign in button, I should see some data inside my I should see some data over here inside my console. So let's just click on the sign in button and see. Okay, so we got some data over here, which is our form data login, and it contains the email and the password. Okay, so now what I'm going to do, since we are able to get the form data successfully over here, and let's also check if the validation is working. So in this case, I'm just going to write some invalid email. So you see here it's saying that please enter a valid email, and if I don't enter an email at all, it's going to tell me that this is a required field. Okay, you can see over here. Similarly, if I'm entering a password less than 6 characters, it's saying that password must be at least 6 characters. If I don't enter it, then the it's going to tell me that this is a required field. Okay, so these messages are coming from the schema that we created. So I hope this is clear how we are able to, do the validation, and also we are going to now handle the form submission. Now, in order to handle the submission, we need to dispatch this auth action that we created over here. So you see, this is our function for logging in this login user, and to this login user, we need to provide the form values, which is the data containing two things, email and password. We already have access to that over here inside this data field, and the navigator is also available over here using this use navigate hook, and this use navigate hook is coming from the React Router doc. So now the next thing is to just dispatch that action. So we are going to create the dispatcher over here. In order to create the dispatcher, we can just simply write const dispatch equals, and this will be equal to use dispatch. Now this use dispatch is another hook from React Redux. Okay, using it you can create a dispatcher function anywhere inside the React functional component. So here I'm just going to write dispatch, and inside this dispatch, let's call this function called login user. So I'm just going to write over here login user, and you can see my editor is suggesting me to auto import it from Redux slice auth. So I'm just going to click on it, and You see, this login user is now imported successfully at the top. I'm just going to, provide these two things, form values and the navigator function. Form values is this data and the navigate is this one. So I'm just going to provide it. Now you can see that integration of our login form is now complete. We have added the validation as well. So if I enter any value over here and if I click on this sign in button, actually that API call will be made. So we can now just, go back to our backend and let's just make sure that our backend is running. So I'm just going to, go to package.json file. And here you see the start command is start colon dev. So I'm just going to use that start colon dev. Okay. And let's wait for our server to get started. Okay, now you can see the MongoDB connection is successful and server is listening on port 8000. So I'm just going to go back and over here inside my chat application client, I'm just going to make sure that inside Axios we are using localhost 8000. Yes, it's correct. And also our client side is running successfully without any errors. Let's just make sure that is the case. So you can just scroll down a little bit, okay, because we have been doing many changes. So obviously there are some errors inside terminal. So I'm just going to scroll down to the bottom. Yes, now it's running successfully. So what we are going to do, we are going to now submit the form data and then we'll go back to our client server and we'll see if we get any, log inside this terminal. So I'm just going to type in my email and some random password, okay, because I haven't actually created any user. So if I click on the sign in button, you see the text changed to submit actually for a very short period of time when it was making the API call. If I go back to my server, you can see that we got a post API call on the endpoint auth/login, but the server sent 400 response in this much milliseconds. Okay, so that means the API call was actually made, but we got some error message from the backend. So let's just open up our inspector tool again. Go to the network tab, and inside network tab, I'm just going to show you that this login call was made. Let me actually put it into full screen mode. If you just go to the payload, this is the body that was sent, and the response that we got back was this one. It says that message, email, or password is incorrect, and the status is error. Now, there is one thing that I want to point out over here that inside our chat application client, inside auth.js, when we are making the call and we got the error, this catch block should have been executed. Now, when this catch block is executing, we are expecting to see a toast error message, okay? But we didn't saw anything like that. So why that is happening? Because I forgot to actually add something inside main.jsx. So when we were adding this toast container, you see it's coming from React Toastify. So we actually had to do one more thing. We had to include this CSS import inside our main file. So I'm just going to now copy this one. Okay. Import React Toastify slash this React Toastify.css. Now let's just go back and inside main.jsx, I'm going to add this line. Now after the page is reloaded, you can see over here, page is reloaded due to some changes inside main.jsx. We can try it out again. So I'm just going to go back to my application. Let's do the same thing again. Fill in the email and some random password. Okay. Click on sign in button. It says submitting and then you see email or password is incorrect. Indeed, that is true because we haven't created any real user yet. So that means the validation is successful. We are able to make the API calls and we are also able to see some feedback according to that. So the next step is to actually integrate our sign up form. Okay. And when we do this, we are going to actually receive an OTP on our email. And after we fill that OTP in the next step, we'll be actually able to successfully create a user inside our database. And I'm actually going to show you everything by opening up my MongoDB Compass that in reality how the user is getting created according to the models that we described inside our server. So that's it for this particular video. I'm going to see you in the next one. Please make sure to like this one, okay? And also make sure to subscribe to the channel. I'm going to see you in the next one. If you have any doubts, leave that in the comment section. You can also join Discord to discuss any of your doubts.